All right, so we just did Damsel yesterday, right? And doubling up on us crying out for creators making new IP. Fallout came out a lot earlier than I thought it was coming out. I thought it was coming out end of the month. Apparently, it was out yesterday or whatnot, like the whole thing. All 8 episodes, Amazon Prime Video,
which is new for Amazon. Amazon usually drops one a week.
Yep. They usually do the Netflix, the non-Netflix model, right? They do the serial model. So that was interesting. We watched the first episode. Part of the plan was a little bit over an hour, and then you stayed up and you watched a few more. I only made it about halfway through episode 2. But the vibe of the game has always been that really weird semi-alternate history, Cold War themed U.S. versus, the Soviets. I think now that they're going to hint it's China in the show now to more reflect like the modern era that we live in now. Like they just call it like that it's red, but it's not necessarily Russian.
Yeah, they were calling it like it was always called the Great War, and it was always hinted at Russia. Just like there was hints at Russia in this one, like former Soviet Union type feel. Because I mean, if you did the look and feel of it, it's set like a modern 1950s still type vibe, which was the height of the Cold War.
Right. I think I was hearing from other spots that it was going to be modernized in a way where it was still a communist kind of scare for the Great War, but to reflect the modern era now that they're telling the story in, like in real life, that it would be hinted more at that it might be China or some conglomeration of Asian entities under the authority of China. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But the vibe of it is that it's a post-apocalyptic future where the bombs fall everywhere, not just in the States, but everywhere. So humanity is basically forced underground into what they call vaults, at least in the States. That's what the private company over here called Vault Tech, if I remember right, because I think they had the signs up. Yep, see, correcting me as I go. Keep me on the line. They had, they basically did like a draft. They brought like the best and brightest underground so we could kind of put the species forward in numerous vaults across the country that were mostly... Well, they were like bunkers that they had built, but I think in some of them they had repurposed missile silos that had deployed and sealed them off, and all kinds of different kind of crap in the lore. But we're on the right track so far, just like with kind of the synopsis of like the world building. Yeah.
Of mostly of like all the different Fallouts, like all the different Fallout kind of set are like at different vaults at the same Great War, right? And like different things happen in each one. Like I remember. Probably because I just played the most recent one I played, which was 4, which is the latest single-player one. They have a multiplayer MMO out there called Fallout 76. Yeah, I really didn't get into that one that much.
Back on Game Pass now. My brother's playing it right now. He said, speaking of just of that game, so we can just tell anybody that's watching, if you guys had passed on that initially when it launched a few years ago, it launched in a terrible state. Like, you didn't miss anything, dude. It was awful. I mean, it was like they told you 60 FPS. If you were getting 12 for a game with no multiplayer in it on launch, no NPCs, and you're only getting 12 frames, there's a problem with your game. Like, it launched in an awful state, but I guess it's up and running now. It's not as liquid, buttery smooth as you'd like, but the game does have a fair share of content expansions that are all included on Game Pass right now. So it's worth your bang for your buck to check out if you're on the pass. But yeah, that was its foray into the MMO, because now there are other players, trade, PvP, and all that kind of crap built into it. So they've come a long way. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, the show is going to take kind of an amalgamation of this element from this Fallout game and then maybe this subplot from this game over here, mix up the factions and tell you a brand new story.
Well, I think what they're going for is that they're going to stay in the world, but it's a totally different vault that we haven't seen in the game. Like they're not going to be doing a playthrough of a game in the show. Like it's just set in the world of Fallout, which I think is great. It's their own original story, as long as they stay true to the lore, which from what I've seen so far, I'm quite happy.
Now see, I'm glad you said that, because I think that'll be an interesting... This is where it's going to get interesting for me as a non-Homer, non-fanboy of the franchise, passing casual interest only. There were a couple of things that came up, right? Thematically or, on a scene-by-scene basis. And I put a pin in it just in my head, and I'm like, is that something the game would have done? Is this a joke in the game? Is this kind of on theme, on brand for the game? So I'm going to give episode 1 a very wide pass, a lot of latitude with some really, I thought, strange creative decisions, because I'm just not sure if that's how the game would have went or not. As we come across them when we watch the show, you can be like, oh, they were on point, that was wrong. that was okay. That's out of left field. You know,
and I caught a lot of the subtleties of the gameplay in the 4 episodes that I have watched. Like, now we're going to do a complete deep dive into this. In about a week's time, as we both get time to actually watch and digest the series. We'll do a longer version of this. With a more deep dive, maybe some more into the game as well. But before we continue on, leave your comments on what you liked about the first episode. We would love to respond back and see what your guys' thoughts were of episode 1.
Yeah, for sure. Because the purpose of our discussion tonight, you know, for as long as we run it tonight, we're going to try and keep it, you know, to a respectable time limit here. Respect you guys' time. Only episode 1. We've both seen. Kingsley has seen a lot more than I have. I only made it about an hour and a half, or halfway through episode 2, and I was like, I gotta go do some other stuff and hit the sack. But in episode 1, I'll say this: I thought I got off to a rip-banging good start. Yep. I loved that they started pre-war. Spoilers. We just because just in case.
Spoilers. If you haven't watched it, pause the video now. Go watch it, and then come back.
I mean, I don't think there's really anything to spoil from episode 1. Episode 1 was very much a setup episode.
Yeah,
so I mean, it's nothing really super shockery about anything that went down, but it starts literally 2 minutes before the war, right? Because we get the last glimpse of the world before, and then boom, bombs are dropping and windows getting blown out, and then cut to credits, titles, and boom, we're in the vault.
Which I have to say is some really good CGI nuclear war in a city type of look and feel. It was really good, especially the first bomb was amazing.
Yep. I thought there was excellent tension in that scene, even though I knew it was coming. And any idiot would know it's coming. It's not like I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. They did a very subtle rise. It started off all nice and pleasant, kid's birthday party, just enough cues on the TV, the newspaper, the casual discussion amongst parents, you know, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And then world's just done.
Yep.
You know, and then you jump right into, you know, the actual, what would be the game. You know, you come back from credits and it's basically, this is life in the vault. It's this weird mashup of like, and it's going to be tough, I think, for, you know, younger kids that are getting into Fallout now that didn't grow up in the decades we did, where we were kind of like, our parents lived through Cold War stuff acutely. So we're not too far removed from it. I don't know that these kids necessarily will understand what that's like. You know, that kind of image, the 50s imagery and Cold War scare, you know, it's got to be weird.
They wouldn't understand the Cuban Missile Crisis feel of this show.
Shelter under your desks and not, you know, air sirens and shit. Like, no. Social media, I think, has done away with a lot of that kind of apprehension of not knowing, because you just have the 3 major news networks back then. But now everybody has all the news all the time, so it's different. But in the game, in the show, rather.
3, but that's just beside the point, off the subject.
Second channel. So yeah, the show, it starts off, it gets right underway. We get the main character first, and I like it. I like getting the main character first in the vault. We get Lucy. She's a young woman. She's probably in her early 20s-ish. She's basically sitting in front of a panel review. We're not going scene by scene. I'm just trying to set the table here. Yep. She's sitting in front of a panel to like basically apply. She's applying for like a marriage license, or to put herself out there available to be, you know, kind of connected to another vault in like a trade, because she can't find a partner within her own vault. And that has a bunch of really interesting, like, sociological, satirical kind of questions you can poke, like, because and this is one of the things I wanted to ask you, they make like 6 jokes inside that hour about getting it on with your cousin. And I'm like, dude, is that on theme for this game? Is that a thing?
Well, it's not really on theme for the game, but you have to think about it. If it was 219 years later, it's pretty much everybody's family in that one vault. So
I get it, but dude, they made like 6 of those jokes, like rapid fire,
and we got rules about that.
I'm like, okay, I'm saying, right? So I thought that was kind of odd, but like, she's kind of quirky. She kind of reminded me of what was the actress name that was on The New Girl? Like, she's that character. Like, she's some
Zooey Deschanel.
Yes, she's her. You know, she's that character. She's the quirky girl next door. She's super attractive, without a doubt. She's super attractive, right? Yeah. And it's her show. Like, this is going to be her show. The crux of the show is stuff pops off in the vault. We won't ruin the details of that for people that are going to watch it, because that is kind of a reveal that comes in the episode, I guess.
Well, that is actually the crux of the game, is how because every one of the games that I play, which is New Vegas 3 and 4, is you start in the vault and there's a inciting incident that has to get you outside of the vault.
To
and
the
that's
surface.
What this was.
Yep.
The inciting event.
I just didn't want to spoil the details about
Yeah.
how it goes down, because there is kind of a screw job that happens that bumps that all in motion.
The other great thing about that interview, and if you play the game, you know, it's a RPG, so you're playing a character. And all RPGs, you have stats, just like D&D based.
I knew you were gonna like this. I knew
this was her pretty much building her character and putting her thing in, and they had the Pip Boys on their thing, and that's
dude, lots of Pip Boys. And dude, let's stop right there real quick just to say, I think people had their concerns that the show was gonna look like on the cheapest side with like the practical effects of the set dressing. Dude, the Pip-Boy looked good. The vault looked good. The jumpsuits all looked good. I thought all the posters with, you know, the boy giving the thumbs up symbol. He's got a name in World, I think, like that. It's the mascot, like he is the okay. That's also his name.
Yeah, that's Pip-Boy.
It's not just the device. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like all of that's on point. The posters are everywhere. The smile, have a nice day with the dude giving the thumbs. That should be the thumbnail. You know, there
and they explain what the thumbs up is, and a lot of people didn't know that about him.
Which was morbidly awesome, because I didn't know that. And that's awesome. That was the quickest, most effective setup payoff I've ever seen in my life. I thought that was great. But in the vault, everything looks like it should from the game. If we're talking about the looks of the show, I think the only time I thought something wasn't on, there were a couple of clips of the power armor, whatever it's called. Is it just power armor? Is that what they're called? That particular kind is like the Mark 60 or something?
Yeah, T60.
T60, right? Yeah, it's not Iron Man. When they're first walking towards the camera, I thought it looked a little flimsy. Like when they're like, oh, imagine getting to wear that every day. And I'm like, okay, this looks a little chintzy, like early Sci-Fi Channel area chintz. But then after that, when they're walking around doing things, I thought it looked kind of good. And the only other time I thought it looked kind of bunk is when the one guy that's going on the mission, because he gets slotted in as a squire, the knight he's following jumps into the helicopter. And it's like they just cut out 10 frames of this thing jumping, because it's on the ground and then it's just in the cargo bay. And I'm like, come on. That looks like dog shit.
It was supposed to make it move faster. It was trying to make it look faster.
It didn't. These guys should consult with the guys that film like John Wick movies, how to speed up fight scenes. That's how you do that.
Actually, it's a very simple thing. You cut out a little bit. Here comes
the tech moment.
you go in and instead of doing like there's two different ways, and the fast way is a straight speed map on it, and then you speed it up with the bar to condense the scene, so it speeds it up a lot faster. So
these guys did not do that. They cut frames from this thing's motion is what they did, because he was on the ground and then he was in the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not an expert. I'm not on that final draft. I don't know nothing about final draft, final cut. I'm not on that. Yeah. But it didn't look good. But all the other stuff looked good.
And then we go into the final story. The final story of the three main characters that they're going to follow around.
Another good point is that I liked how they compartmentalized Lucy, Maximus, and the Ghoul.
The Ghoul.
And I'm like, okay, because this gives me enough info, kind of. I think it was a little short on Maximus. They're like, okay, he was a kid that got rescued by the Brotherhood of Steel. I'm not sure how that timeline works. I saw some people online saying it was way too early for them to be involved, but I'm like, I mean, if the world's already been built, they're there. I think most people know they're there if you're vaguely familiar with the franchise. The same thing as like the Enclave. Like I know what they were talking about.
And like when you're playing the game, like the beginning of the game is very railed. Like to get you to the first couple of your main mission, and then once you get through that part, like even in 4. It was like the 4 is where you get your first power armor. Like after that is when the open world kind of opens up to you, and that's when you start seeing the different factions, and that's when you start choosing. Here, what they did is they just introduced the factions kind of right off the bat. Like in the three, you have the Vault Dwellers, you have the Mutants, and then you have the Brotherhood of Steel, and they also introduced the Enclave.
That was the scientist with the dog, right? That's where he was from. I thought that's where I was going. But they also very cleverly wove all three of those together. The Brotherhood of Steel is looking for the guy that ran from the Enclave, because he has an item of insurmountable power or whatever, and then Lucy from the Vault Dweller sides bumps into said dude from the Enclave.
Who knows
you know
her.
What I mean? So who does, and gave her the warning, basically, you're not ready to be up here, head back down, you know? But the crux of the story they're trying to tell here, guys, is that stuff pops off in the beginning of the show, and Lucy has to brave going back up to the surface for the first time in 200 some odd years. Like, they were already planning, they mentioned it, which I thought again was clever. They said, Lucy, when she marries this dipshit and has kids, their kids will be able to play on the surface, because we're pretty sure our readings say that the surface radiation will finally be down and we can recolonize and we can reassert human dominance on the surface and bring law to the lawless, Judge Dredd, blah blah blah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So they were already planning to go. Story stuff happens that we won't ruin for you guys, and Lucy's like, I'm gonna go up there. Who's coming with me? And instead of having like 4 supporters like Lord of the Rings, there's no fellowship. Everybody's like, nah, Doc, we're gonna stay down here. And then her brother very cleverly says,
like, I'm too chicken.
Right. But it all made sense, because she wants to go to the surface to recover her father, who was a kidnapped victim as the result of the stuff that pops off. So she's trying to go rescue him. Yeah. And the brother very astutely points out, no, they're not going to go, because if we get him and bring Dad back, he's like the mayor or the vault overseer, then these jackasses can't be in charge. I'm like, okay, that all tracks. They all seem like scumbags, honestly, especially the ones we were talking about before the show. I'm like, obvious jerk, don't want him. This chick's kind of obnoxious, But, dude, let's talk about parental warnings real quick for this show. Certain adult themes aside, violence in the first episode? Okay.
Yeah, very, how would we say this?
Gruesome?
Kingsman level gruesome.
Graphic?
Gory.
I'm 3Gs deep. I mean, what else can we say in there, man?
And gratuitous sex.
The gratuitous. There we are. Dude, we got some good slashings. I mean, somebody got a fork in the face. There was all kinds of
a broken picture across the face.
Yep. That was nasty.
Yeah.
There was a good baseball bat to the dome in the back scene. That entire sequence where it pops off was shot in a very Guardians of the Galaxy kind of way, where there's it's kind of half slow-mo, and there's lots of interesting stuff happening in the background.
Yeah.
You've got an obvious thing here that you're supposed to be watching, but then here and here and here, there's all these little things that if you rewind it and go back, you're like, oh, I missed that. Oh, I didn't see that the first time. There's lots of that, dude. But that whole scene, it was like 10 minutes of insanity.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, okay, that set the tone for this show. This show could go somewhere dark when it wants to.
Yeah,
and that was my next question about the game. Does the game ever pop off that way? Because I honestly don't remember that level of graphicness.
So they're like the slow motion part played heavy with like when you do your you have those smart aims. I forget what it's called, but you push like both buttons and like slows it down. And then
VATS VATS. I remember that.
Yep. And you take your aim at like a body part, like the head, the thorax,
you can shoot the gun out, you can hit the joint.
And then the bullet comes slow motion in. So I thought that played real well into that. And then like if you shoot someone like close up with a shotgun, their head will explode in the game. So
dude, do you remember the one where the guy basically had the other dude swallow the gun barrel and then fired automatic through the back of his skull? I'm like, oh my god. I was not expecting that when I signed on to this show, especially like you and I had a run last year of most of the stuff we reviewed was like rated G for TV, like Star Wars, Marvel, Percy Jackson stuff. I'm like, oh, whoops. Even Halo that I covered, earlier in the year has some adult stuff in it, some themes, a little bit of violence, but it's like alien stuff. Nobody cares if the Arbiter loses an eye. In this though, I'm like, oh god, these are people and they're getting demolished. It was pretty savage. I was pleasantly surprised that they went there in this show, because I think that'll keep the kind of that core audience that they might be looking for interested here, just in terms of the content, like the graphic content anyway. The cousin stuff is kind of weird, and I'd like to just, and maybe through 4 episodes, I don't want you necessarily to spoil it, but like the first episode in terms of the adult skin content, I mean, they know mostly dudes are watching this show, right? So we get 4 gratuitous butt shot scenes of that one guy, and then this chick's wearing her dress the whole night. Okay, all right. I mean, maybe you don't know who your core audience is, but
it also may be contractual as well.
Oh no, I'm sure that's why. I'm 100% certain that's why. I just thought I'd point out that there's not going to be a whole lot of people on the other side of the aisle complaining that dude was in that condition, the same way they weren't complaining when Chris Hemsworth and Thor was bare ass and chained to a floor. But God forbid Scarlett Johansson wears a plunging neckline in a movie, and all of a sudden we have to have articles written on misogyny in the male gaze. I just thought I'd throw that in there. It did pop up in my head because one of those scenes I thought was particularly obnoxious. Let's just say he wiped something down on the drapes, but I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
That was kind of funny, but still. But anyway. So your vibe for the show on a technical level, we already talked how it looks, talked how it sounds. Like I love the 50s vibe with like the music and all the classic American, songs.
Me and my wife said that we were really glad that they did that, because in the game it's like that. Like you can turn on in the Pitbull, you can tune in that music and listen to the 50s style music.
So I'm saying the vibe was on point. Dude, the vibe was absolutely on point. It's like life in the vault. It's. They want you to believe it's a utopia because it's safe, it's semi-comfortable, people have what they need, it's managed democracy.
Yeah.
But it's totally fascist, and we all know that because you're all wearing the same jumpsuit. You know what I mean? Like, but it's still, you get it that's their status quo. That's the ideal life. They've grown up 3 generations in there. You know, so the vibe I think is perfect. What did you think? And remember, we're only episode 1 here because you're way ahead. Pacing wise for the first episode, did your boredom meter ever trickle, pop off, or were you just in and enjoyed it start to finish, no qualms about pacing?
I had no problems with pacing. I just enjoyed the ride because I want to see how they did it. Like it really interests me because of the game is an interesting game to begin with, and to sit there and try to adapt a game, which we all the views of this channel is adaptations are hard. Video games are harder.
In any medium. Yep.
So to see how they were going to do it, I do like that they're doing their own story. They're not trying to follow any certain story out of the game. They're making their own characters that is set in the world, and the type of characters. Now you'll see some familiar faces, I believe, throughout it. I even believe Knight Titus is in one of the games.
It sounded familiar, and if it sounded familiar to me as a passive fan of the franchise, it must be a thing somewhere.
Yeah, and that is in the first episode, is where Matt Smith becomes Titus's squire.
Yep.
So, yeah, I had no problem with the first episode. The pacing, I kept looking and it was like, oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy. So it has familiar faces as in actors who I know can deliver performances. So yeah, overall, I was really happy to see Michael Emerson in this. I think this is right up his wheelhouse. He plays, was it the scientist on the run, the target?
Oh yeah, dude, I love that guy. That guy looks like a creepy son of a bitch in everything he's in.
From Lost to Person of Interest to he's just been in so much, so much of the nerd genre. I mean, Saw. He's voiced a lot of stuff for Batman and Superman animated. So yeah, really appreciate Michael Emerson. I'm glad he's in this show. So
yeah, that was a good segment that he was in for sure. Like I think he definitely pulls off the vibe for what they were going for with creepy rogue scientist who's actually trying to do the right thing. I think working with a dog without violence or negative conditioning. As a comparison to the other experiment that was running. I'm interested to see more from him. I like what you said about them trying to tell their own story here, because I think that's, if there was a franchise you could get away with doing that with, I think it's Fallout. Because the games don't have a voiced main character that has personality traits. It's very much blank slate. You're playing the guy. You're playing the character.
Yeah, so it's set different in the first-person Elder Scrolls type video game.
Right, the voiceless protagonist. Right, so it's not where all the things that I hated about Halo were because I didn't believe that was ever Master Chief. That was never John. That was never Cortana. They won't have that problem here because they've left it to, they just invented their own main character and they're going to put her out through whatever story arc they want to go. I think the only place they can really screw lore up would be if they adapt a famous subplot, because Fallout, like you said, it's just like Skyrim. It's notorious for, we've got 600 side quests you can do in this game, and there's probably some that people love and some people hate. So if they take the ones people love and get them wrong, you know what I mean? If they incorporate them into a mini arc like episode 4, 5, 6 and get any of that shit wrong, I see people bitching about that. If they had the power armor do something stupid that it couldn't do in game, that would be something that would trip them up, something like that. But character-wise, I think, like you said, they're in the clear to tell whatever story they want, and then we'll judge that story on its own merit later when it's done.
On the downside of also a fan of the game is that the power armor, one of the things, and I know they don't need to do this in the show, but the power armor is big thing that it needed power. You had to charge the battery, and that's one of the things that you always had to do, and make sure you had enough power to charge your new batteries. You had to charge it in the airship if you choose to become part of the Brotherhood of Steel, which I did, and for one of my characters was part of the Brotherhood of Steel, so it was kind of fun. So you always had to charge power armor going into battle, so it was pretty cool. I love the goofiness of it as well. Like when he's the squire and they're running, he has that big oversized bag he has to carry for the night. Yeah. It's just perfect.
But again, it works because you know what Fallout is. You know, the collectively like the gaming community knows what Fallout is. So when we hit those aesthetics with oversized power armor that like you step up and into like the loader from like Aliens, you know what I mean? Or you've got the oversized backpack. You've seen pictures of the Pip-Boy in title cards in the game that look like the little Monopoly cards or whatnot, where he's carrying a big bag like that as he's setting out when they give you your first assignment at the beginning of the game and you're assigning skill points and things like that. So it looks ridiculous, but the tone was already set up early on to be this really weird mix of it is comical 50s tongue-in-cheekery with some brutal violence when it pops off. Like the tone of this isn't BioShock. You know what I mean? Like it's different than that. That'll be an interesting show to compare this to when that comes out too, by the way.
BioShock,
for sure. Because the vibes are kind of the same there with like, you know, the 50s alternate history running against what we know to actually have happened. That'll be interesting. Conversation for another day. But yeah, pacing wise, dude, I struggle with longer episodes of things because I think about the other things I could be doing with my time. Like I want to play more Helldivers. I'm starting to put together notes for a book right now. Should I be doing that? This episode was over an hour, dude. It was, what would you say? It was hour 10? We should all be doing that. We should be doing a couple of these things together, separate conversation. But at an hour and 10 minutes or whatever it was, I don't remember checking my phone, and it was kind of late when we got to the show, and that's usually when I'm bored, I'm getting kind of tired, you know, it's like it's after work, it's after family, it's after all that stuff, but we didn't even get into this episode until like 10 is when I queued it up. I had to do something else before I watched it.
I
was thoroughly sitting there like, oh, snap, oh, like, I was in. So, pacing-wise, I didn't have any issues either. I don't think I have big takeaways from really anything. Like, I guess my concern is just everything just plays out in like a natural progression, like as long as the message isn't present, and like, dude, I don't care that the main character is a girl. Like those criticisms of our side are stupid.
I think it was actually well played. Like she looks like someone that could go out and this be like the daddy's girl who wants to get her dad back.
I mean, it's they're telling their own story, their own thing. I mean, I will say that it looked like a bunch of the guys are kind of clowns, but I think everybody there is kind of a clown. You know, like she's not particularly savvy at anything.
Yeah,
you know, I don't know. Like I wouldn't. Call
all of them had their own version of social awkwardness, just because they were trapped in the vault. Weird. Yeah,
right. I mean, even like when we get over to like the Brotherhood of Steel part, and we're getting the Maximus story, he's socially inept. The people that were bullying him were socially inept. The leadership seems weird. I don't know. Everybody on this show is weird. There's no normal. I mean, Lucy would be the closest thing to normal, but like, you know, she met a guy and then 15 seconds later we're going the marital route on the kitchen table. Like they're all kind of odd. The culture is just weird on the show.
Yep.
But I mean, if she's better, it'll be funny where if she becomes better than everybody at everything, that'll revise my opinion. You know, and then I'll be like, okay, here we go. We Mary Sue the character. You guys did this to yourselves. She didn't exist in game, so you didn't take something good and ruin it. This is the best you could do. We'll apply that same metric to Star Wars The Acolyte when that comes out in a month. Like, this is the first thing you guys are doing with minimal source engagement to pull from. Sink or swim. If you make a good show, we'll say it's a good show. If you do all the same Mary Sue tropes, we're going to be like, we told you this was going to happen because you've never shown us you could do anything besides that. But I don't smell that here yet. I'll say that for Fallout right now. is that I enjoyed episode 1. If we were going to do just a number for just the first episode, I'd probably give it a solid 3.5. I think, I think there was enough of the blood and gore in the middle to make it worth my watching. But at the end of the day, it's not wholly original, so I can't go off like the deep end and be like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like... No, I've seen this before. This is some pretty standard sci-fi post-apocalyptic stuff so far, in my opinion. What do you think?
I think so far, I'm not ready to give it a score. I will say that I am very excited to watch the rest of it. Like, I want to finish this. I asked my wife after we watched the first one, and I'm like, so what did you think? Like, I do. This is just my thing.
Did she watch all 4 with you or no?
Yeah,
did she only watch episode 1?
No, she
stayed
watched
up
all 4.
That's a pretty good sign. That's a pretty good sign for a show.
Yeah, her take was, I want to watch more. Cool.
So, dude, you can't rate me 1 episode? You can't give me a score out of 5 for episode 1?
Well, before I give my score, let's go talk about some other people's scores. So I'm over here on IMDb, and the IMDb rating is 8.7 out of 10, which pretty high. Out of 7.3 thousand
that's pretty slapping
reviews. It is the number 11 show on IMDb for views, like people looking it up on IMDb.
And it's only day 1. We're not even into the weekend yet. That's climbing that, dude. If it's already flirting with the top 10. It's only
been out for 24 hours.
That's what I'm saying.
They dropped all 24 hours ago, so.
Yep. There are people that are just, we're East Coast. There's people just now getting out of work, West Coast, that maybe they're settling in to finally watch this thing. Yep. So that number's going up.
And then Rotten Tomatoes has that 93% certified fresh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the Metacritic assigned it a 73 out of 100 based off of 31 critics.
I believe that. Metacritic usually runs tougher, in my opinion, out of all of the 3 that you just kind of cited. So I'm with that. So, I mean, that's a pretty good consensus. I think maybe the jury is out for a lot of people because we haven't seen it all yet, but it seems like folks that have watched it are enjoying it so far. And I think it's probably because we can tell this was a show that's designed for grown-ups. Like, it's not trying to be a kid show, so it's not watering anything down or pulling any punches. Like, I'm not going to call it Game of Thrones level of adult. Like, it's definitely not that. No. I don't think the themes are ever going to get that deep, that complicated. I don't think there's ever going to be a sophisticated system of politics, of backstabbery, or anything like that. But I mean, like, it's a grown-up show that has adult themes, from the skin content to the to the violence that it's going to have.
Yeah, those are how I would say it is. It's like a Pixar film in reverse, because a Pixar film has those hidden jokes in there for the adults watching it.
Yeah.
This is the exact opposite with some things that kids would pick up on and have fun with, but they're extremely adult themed with like I said, skin and
we're calling it
a lot of
adult
violence.
Skin content given my current audience. You know what I mean? There we are. So yeah, I'll let you off the hook for a rating on episode 1 then, but then we'll do our traditional. We'll put a number together when we bang out the whole series review.
Yeah.
But so it sounds like we're to wrap it up and get out of here. It sounds like we're on about the same page. Then we both want more. You're at the halfway point, and you still want more, which is super encouraging. Because I know when you just most recently did what was the Godzilla show, Monarch? You were like, dude, it started okay, it got really good, and then it kind of petered, if I remember right.
Yeah.
It kind of went nowhere for you.
And then with also Ahsoka, I'm like, is it over yet? Do I have to watch this next week?
Dude, Ahsoka was the most miserable I've ever seen you review a show. By far. It's like, we've watched some crap. Ahsoka was basement, barrel bottom, scraping crap for you, which is some shit. It was just, dude, to me, it was just another Tuesday, like Bison style.
If I was a wrestler, that's the show that would turn me heel.
Yep. It's, oh my God, why? Why? We're out of time. Yeah, it would be exactly that. Dude, I got you, dude. But all right, guys, that's Fallout. If you missed the beginning, Fallout, Prime Video, Amazon, whatever you're calling it, all the episodes are out. They're running an hour long through the first 2. Were episodes 3 and 4 also give or take an hour?
They all had some pretty long run times. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick.
Because I'm always curious. I'm always curious about that, because I think that whenever they do this hodgepodge, 8 episodes, but 6 of them are an hour, and then one of them's 22 minutes, and then another one's 30. It does something with the pacing overall, and I kind of hate it. I like the uniform, normal approach to things like Netflix's Wednesday or Stranger Things. Nice and even, as much as I hate Halo, most of them are all the same. You know, it seems to be that the crappier ones or the stuff on Disney Plus usually screws us with the varying time.
So it's like episode 1 is 74 minutes. Episode 2 is 65 minutes, then 56, 48, 45, 60, 61, 62.
Dude, so they're all real episodes. Some of them just go long. Good. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that also.
It's not like you had that 25-minute episode of.
That's what I was just saying. Was that Ahsoka that did that? I think it was Mando season 3, where it was like one episode was like 18 minutes long, and I'm like, that's like 9 minutes of showtime when you cut the credits and shit, man. Like, what did you do? Did you film a student short film? And then we watched it, and it looked like they filmed a student short film.
Ahsoka had like a 22-minute episode without the title character in it, except for in the first 5 minutes.
Yep. Oh yeah, I remember that one. Stupid. But we're not here to talk about Ahsoka. We're here to talk about Fallout. We did that. We appreciate you guys for sticking around. If you want to hear us talk more about Fallout, we'll be back again in about a week to do the whole thing. But like King Z said, if you watched all of it, put what you liked in the comments below. Please try to keep it to no spoilers if you're still listening. We'd appreciate that. I don't like the spoilers myself. I like to get things firsthand. King Z, anything else to say, or can we get out of here and start editing this piece?
Nope, I think we're good. So if you did like this, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. It does help us. We are sorry that we took so much time to get some videos out. We were both, I was getting settled being back home. Winter Wolf had some things going on, so we're happy to be back. Thank you for being patient with us. So go ahead, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you unsubscribed, thinking we weren't going to be back, go ahead and hit that subscribe button again.
We back!
And now we do have a little hiatus coming up, but we're going to have videos going on during the hiatus that we're recording for you now. So we will keep our content coming. Have no worries. We're here for you. We do this for you because we're surely not doing it for our health. But y'all have fun. Thank you so much.
Later, guys.